All right. Welcome back. So we're going to start the second half of our evening with our poetic opener. We're so happy to welcome Wendy Donawa this evening. Wendy spent much of her adult life in Barbados, where she was educated and worked as a college instructor and museum curator. She has returned to her Victoria birthplace on the unceded traditional territory of the Songhees and Esquimalt people. Her poems have appeared in magazines, chapbooks, anthologies, and public transport buses. She has read in libraries, bookstores, literary festivals, reading series, parks, and pubs. Her first book, The Thin Air of the Knowable, was a Gerald Lampert Award finalist. Her second collection, Our Bodies Unanswered Questions, was recently published by Frontenac House. And the last time that I hosted, last fall, when Wendy was reading a Zoom reading, she was out in Souk reading where she was being threatened with having the Wi-Fi turned off any moment. And she was calm, cool, and collected. But I'm happy to say it's much calmer here tonight, Wendy. So come on up and welcome.
Leanne.
Here. Sorry, I forgot.
The famous open mic and the famous
not on you.
Now we're all fine. Well, thank you again. Now we're here. Thank you everyone for a fabulous open mic. What a way to celebrate taking a mask off from time to time. And I'm very honored to be opening for Alan Hill's fine poems. It was really difficult to choose something I thought would be suitable for tonight. It is such a terrible, uncertain historical moment. I didn't feel the light and fearless would work. And so finally I chose a poem that I wrote near the beginning of the pandemic, where I think it was a combination of it was so sudden, we were slightly in denial. And then the weather was quite nice and we went through a period of we're all in this together and we'll get through this, and a certain kind of energy, and it kind of went downhill from there. But I was in that overlap stage where I had a series of poems called, like Defoe's historical book, Journal of the Plague Year Redux. This is Journal of the Plague Year 1. At first, we didn't notice the change much. From China Beach, we watched a whale breach, ate chopped egg sandwiches, read of quarantined cities in far countries, said, oh, those poor people, said to traveling friends, better come home. But they wanted to explore markets, souks, bazaars, wanted frisson of the exotic, amber chunked necklaces, wanted that ikat workshop. We fell asleep in one world, woke in another. We were good citizens, did not hoard toilet paper, phoned friends for virtual happy hour, poured wine, heard voices of exhausted Spanish doctors explaining triage means deciding who will die. We said, well, there will always be war, epidemics, famine, such a pity. We did not say how in our plenty to ensure enough for all. Some keep hoarding, their bunkers never full enough. Terrible and magnificent, the archangels of what if and not yet, soar and preen above our city, airfoil of their dark wings sweeping, I'm thinking Verrocchio here, to feather our streets and alcoves, sift through keyholes, coat our frontal cortex. The screen's colorful simulations, red, violet, bright as cheerleaders' pom-pom, COVID's piñata of death, At a chess tournament in Siberia, contestants cannot stop touching their faces. We binge watch Marie Kondo, tidy our cupboards. Some do yoga, murmur mantras. No one remembers what day of the week. Some are astonished by childhood liturgies, find themselves muttering, "Preserve us, O Lord, while waking and guard us while sleeping. Not yet, not yet, not me, not me, no." And then I went into a sonnet phase. I have a whole bundle of those. It was perhaps a hope for structure in a time of unpredictability. And at this time also, I was trying to reconnect with my old friends in Barbados. Even my book is falling apart here. Where concentration phrase and tempers. Tides and currents hauled up like bedclothes, kept moon cycles long before our lot invented time, its measurement with globes and water wheels, sundials, pendulums. Back then, sun and season were enough to get the crops in, butcher stock for fall. Now, solitude and stasis mark the novel threat, where concentration phrase and tempers, all walled in, the hippocampus shrinks. Yet from my old Barbados home, friends Skype or phone, one does tarot cards, news, she thinks, from the dead. Another found a bat swimming right in her kitchen basin. What can it mean? We ponder, quiz each other. Do you remember dates, numbers? And I'll finish with a little poem that was a surprise because these chapbooks just arrived yesterday, but I got involved with a project with typography students in Vancouver, where their instructor gave them a term project to create poetry chapbooks. So they had to find a poet and borrow some poems, design the book, set the type, put the whole thing together. And so this young woman, Rebecca New, designed this little chapbook with a dozen poems, each of them a different form, so that there's a sonnet, a glossa, a rondo, that sort of thing. So I'm going to read the last one, a blues. And the blues form, it's in tercets with the two first lines almost the same and all three lines rhyming. So you've got a rhyme scheme, A, B, 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 etc. And the other thing that brought this on is that I live in a condo, and a lot of single people have found this such an isolating and difficult time, and they nearly all seem to have acquired cats. Pandemic condo blues. That next door lock clicks means her cat's got out again. Yeah, it clicks all right. The woman's cat's got out again. There it is, its world and its disdain. Its world's a condo corridor, a dusty wilderness beyond, yeah, dusty carpet too, a wilderness beyond cat food dish, litter box, escapes any second. And there the woman crouches, makes small pleading noises. Yeah, she jingles toys and makes small pleading noises. She's tossing chicken shreds nearer the decoys. The cat retreats, licks paws and stares with scorn. Don't want that jingle toy. It stares with scorn. It wants that stalk and lunge, the glory of bright gore. At last it's bored, it's regal with contempt, returns. It's bored at last and regal with contempt, returns. The woman weeps a little, turns, and clicks the door closed, draws evening curtains. Yeah, she clicks that lock and draws those evening curtains. stares into the fridge as if she's sure the answer's in its veggie drawer. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy. The blues form in poetry. I love this. Thank you for introducing at least me to that. And Wendy does have copies of her book here as well tonight, at $20. So talk to her about that. All right, next we have our feature reader, and I need my notes here. Okay. Welcome to Victoria, our feature reader, Alan Hill. It's great to have you here. Alan was born in the UK and immigrated to Canada in 2005 after meeting his wife while working in Botswana. He is the former Poet Laureate of the City of New Westminster, 2017 to 2020, former president of the Royal City Literary Arts Society, and was the editor and curator of A Poetry of Place, Journeys Across New Westminster, published in partnership with New Westminster Arts Services. His writing has been published internationally, and his poetry has appeared in Event, CB2, Canadian Literature, the Antigonish Review, subTerrain, and Poetry is Dead, among others. He works in the field of community development and immigrant settlement and lives in New Westminster, BC. And I thought, just for something different, I sensed we might want to do something a little lighter. I asked him to tell me 3 things about himself, 2 true and 1 false. So here they are in no particular order. I once got chased by a hippopotamus. All right. I once had soccer tryouts for Liverpool. I once sat next to Prince William in an internet cafe. So when you go to buy his book, weigh in. What do you think? Whether it's the hippopotamus, the tryouts with Liverpool, or Prince William and him just hanging in the internet cafe. Okay. Anyway, welcome, Alan.
Oh, don't worry. Well, okay. I'll survive. Thank you. And yeah, that Prince William story is actually, I'm going to blow it all here, but that's true. That's true. It's in the old days where it was an internet cafe. Those things are things of the past. And he was printing something, and it was one printer connected to all the printers. Sorry, one printer connected to all the computers, and accidentally deleted his print job. I was quite proud of myself in a way. But a little bit of Republican action there. Oh yeah, how's that? Any good? How's that? Great, wonderful. My great pleasure to be here. A few old friends here, which is wonderful. Wonderful to see some old friends. And just thank you so much for inviting me. So this book, I'll read a little bit from the introduction to give you an idea of what it's all about. Some of it won't initially appear particularly cheerful. So sorry about that. It's not particularly cheerful times, but some of it I think can be quite uplifting. And it's a book about mental illness, but it's also a book about mental wellness and recovery as well. So it's not all doom and gloom, I don't think. Hope not. But let me start with the intro, a little bit of that. This book is a story of brothers and of an illness and the illnesses that came after. I was made as a person for good and bad by the experience of growing up with an older brother who received a diagnosis of a mental illness, who spent most of his adult life in institutions. Poems written directly about that time, interspersed with and framed by work concerning my own later and linked mental health struggles and my move towards a form of recovery. So it's kind of poems written based on the memories of 50 years ago almost, really, of visiting my brother in an old-fashioned institution, one of those big old places that every town used to have, and interspersed with poems written in the first year of lockdown, I suppose, thinking about mental health and mental recovery and what that meant to me. Yeah. And some of the, I think I was saying earlier, some of these poems I've read a million times, and some of them, because I haven't been reading for a long time, I've never read before. So I'm going to push my comfort limit a bit, comfort zone a little bit, and read a few that I haven't read before and see what happens. This is an old one, though. It's called Eating My Own Heart, for Christopher Hill, who's my brother, so I'll refer to him occasionally. Eating my own heart. Overwhelm me, brother. Obsess me, make me you. Now, that would be love. I would need to kill you for that. Take an axe to your double bind, see it triple bind in that silent forest of the beginning of us. The start of humankind, its tight-fingered blood, curled in the ear of first light, seen by nobody. That is who we are. We're the sharing of all you have, the needles, tablets, the half-room rooming houses of the strapped-down normality you're allowed to be. All your death, which is nothing but mine, that I cannot live without. You and I together, trapped beneath the tree that fell, that could not be heard, that is crushing us with the hardness of love, bedding us on the sharpened points of Eden. And I'll try this one. I've never read this before. This is one I've never read before. It's just called Mother. Mother. My mother gifted me a moonstone. On those nights when my brother made excuses, refused to talk, disappeared into the forest of himself, his quiet desperation, she would wander in the yard, its knee-high grass, jungle of broken machinery, old washing machines, cookers, abandoned domesticity. Hold the stone up, let it net the rays of the moon itself, as she rubbed it into existence between her finger and thumb, sparked the deities of its light into fire. What I remember most was how round that stone was, that it had no beginning, end. It clinched the past, future together in a perfection. I know I must still make that choice between silence, defeat, or what she left me, that I hold in the palm of my hand, close my hand over, form into a circle. I'll read these two. This is an old memory. Well, kind of, some of these memories are old memories combined with new ones. It's kind of half about visiting my brother a long time ago in an institution and seeing him chain smoking, but also kind of about, based on a neighbour of mine I used to see during the early days of lockdown in the dark, sitting outside a house, chain smoking. It's called Prayer. There he is, my brother who smokes, alone on a winter evening, hardened in silence on the asylum steps, bundled in the unsaid on the edge of his own life. His face lit up, shadowed in innumerable iconographies, quizzical side eyes, his cigarette being pulled through his lungs into reality of this moment, glowing through him in a bruise, redness, and nail head of fire, burnt into the bare arms of the dark. This one's called The Asylum Visit. The Asylum Visit. An inverted Victorian castle built to keep in, not out. My mother efficiently shuffled me through identical corridors, slipped in through security doors onto the ward, past anonymous doctors in crumpled whites, those little worker ants with delusions of grandeur, or clipboard attitude smudgy glasses, who never seem to see you, who threw you in reptilian slip. Here was milky cold coffee, a rainbow of medication. The poor, the terminal, the chronic. My older brother perched silently over a plate of beans. Then the slippers. That was what I wanted to see. Pandas, sharks, hippos, lined in a largactyl parade. Garfields, a Kermit, a foxhead, rooted on curled linoleum. That was for me. How I envied them with their exotic footwear. As my mother sat in silence, waiting for time to be up, cigarettes burnt down onto carbuncled knuckles, nobody moved. This is going back a bit. This is before I was born, about a family holiday that my two older brothers went on. It's called Older Brothers, France, 1963. In this photograph, I'm not born yet. My older brothers are guarding my entrance, scouting out my future ground in matching t-shirts and shorts, armed in mouths, eyes and hair. They're holding for me. Two boys of 8 and 10 on a Mediterranean beach, in the certainty of an August heat that pins their uncertain smiles into a thicket of steady light, holds them there, jamming clock hands tight, denying time, if only just for them, just for this moment. That was before it all. Schizophrenia, social workers, the police, the unwilling neighbours, the lives disemboweled by apathy and accident, couriered away to unknown destinations under the ambivalent cosh of those paid to care. Whatever they have not been since, they were that day, giving me heat, light, that I learned to live by. This one's called Where I Live. Where I live. Yes, when I bother to notice it, allow it. It is perpetually 40 years ago, a different continent. My brother is just home from the hospital. A plastic bag with his belongings is in the hall. A slipper with a torn sole, a worn-out toothbrush that has knifed itself into daylight. The centre of me is 8, lone. I run into the fields at the back of the house, into the unhurried bud of a plump spring that is bedded, feeds in the flesh, clay, muscled centre of my existence, on my consequence, perpetual inconsequence. I'm always in that place, in that sliver of unvisited woodland, edgeland, that may no longer exist, that is not visible between the highway, wheat fields, the drop to the river bank. I'll read this one. This one's called The Hospital Dance. It's based on kind of a couple of things. I worked years ago in an institution for people with autism, and I used to organise this very unusual Saturday night disco with lots of Coke, lots of chips, and lots of scratched old vinyl records being played. And it's also about visiting my brother years before that at a social event at this hospital he was in. The Hospital Dance. On Saturday night, they came in ones and twos from their tiny rooms for Coke and chips to inch themselves onto the skin-thin hardwood, shimmy between the flakes of peeled plaster, dropped from uncleanably high ceilings. They came to dance, move themselves to a squat bomb of antique record player that unstably vibrated on the glass-topped table as I spun old 45s donated by concerned relatives, picked up in thrift stores, middles missing from their jukebox days, from the days when people once paid to listen. They would have meant something for people more solid than us, to those that had edges, boundaries, dreams they could leave behind, had jobs, shadows that disappeared when they woke. Well, we had their music now, for a while, a little bit of them as well. Most of us dance on our own, stretched unfashionable knitwear, yesterday's jeans, became lost in our own moves, disjointed as we uncoupled our bodies to the beat, worked on being invisible, becoming furniture in dim-lit corners. That night, a girl with smudgy glasses danced with the banisters. A teen with a wispy beard clapped in a corner, nobody touched. In fact, nobody ever did touch, not here, where surviving in your own body was enough, knowing it was still there, still moving, however out of step to your commands. This is kind of based on a memory of being a little kid and my older brother, who had these serious mental health issues, carrying me up a mountain in Wales on his shoulders. It's called Before History. My St. Christopher before the fall, before his drinking, the half-cooked buffet of himself, the all-you-can-eat for cops, psychologists, spiteful neighbours, pitying strangers. Before it all, when there was a holiday, him carrying me, his little brother, on his shoulders, up a stretching vein of mountain track, a delicate line winding itself airborne to hook within the gullet of a hardening fog, to leave us eyeless in the radar of faith, to leap from rock to rock. I felt it as he jumped us into oblivion, the smack of the base of his boots as he found it, this time only coming up to his knees. And try and get on to some of the stuff I promised you about wellness, the slightly more cheerful stuff. Gosh, here we go. What have we got here? Okay, where are we? Oh yeah, okay. Well, this one's actually called Wellness. Let me try that one. Wellness. To know where the ice will hold, where there is ice, to recognize it for something safe that will hold my body, cradle my mind. To know the possible, impossible, accept the empty bed, wallet, home, the gaps, pools of dark where nothing works, no wiring, handrails, no end. What I have is this: a bed, a cleaner, medication, the occasional social worker, a faith in the force of love that is beyond me, does not need me to be perfect, complete, anything but what I am, the dedication I can offer in this moment. I've accepted that I am broken, not worse than the others that tease, look through me, not usually. I have my facts, my lists, my family histories. I know when people were born, the date they died. Cannot know how anybody feels, thinks. I have milky coffee, television, sunlight in the park. Most of them normal, do not even have that. So busy are they with their futures that never seem to arrive. That's trying to get into my brother's head a little bit. Okay. Okay, these are a couple of poems about my own wellness journey in the last days of COVID. Nighttime in the ravine. Down I go into the blue, lucid ice, labyrinth of liberty and winter light. Ghost lines, desire lines, the uncurling crozier of being, in footfall song lines, unreadable, the press of my boots over the unknown meteor of each moment. Above me a crow's lyric crackle, in my hand the world and the perfection of a fallen egg. Behind me there are blind roads, shallow ways, a suburbia, an apocalypse, lockdown. In front are possibilities, the stories in each rock, in the move of treetop, in late daylight. In the Coyotes, collection of votaries as I cross the border between being, otherness, that pull me in the homeward channel of the path, into the dissolve of solid geography, the rules of resonance, misfiring medication, rise of the clear grey water of nothingness, everything. In the deaf of sunlight, in this unknown knowledge, freedom, this pathway in the dark where I must go, where my mind cannot take itself, cannot find a reason, logic, without each step that is only mine to tread, one foot at a time, down into the meaning. And this one's called The Coyotes in the Ravine. A rare place, not yet astroturf, where at twilight there are coyotes. 1, 2 at a distance that look at me, slip away, transmute into undergrowth, aware I'm dangerous, not trustable. I admire them for that, how well they know me, recognize my docility, muted, bloodless humanity, that it is deadly. I have bastardized myself to secure a roof, acceptance, food, love. I should admit what I know, that without wildness, there is no order, without darkness, filth, no purity. Without the misshapen, broken, incalculable, there is no proportion, shape. Without coyotes in the ravine, I have nothing. And I'm going to finish with these two, which are two sort of side-by-side attempts to summarize sanity. People talk about madness, but they often talk about sanity and what that is. So one is kind of mine, and one is kind of my brother's, I suppose. Epilogue. In the end, after the drugs, incarceration, enforced lovelessness, poverty, it was worth it all. He knows it now, how it always be strange, different, not one of them, perhaps not really even part of his own family. He has his room, TV, lazy boy, fridge, fish suppers, coach trips with the social group, bingo, Catholic church one day, Protestant the next, in the open shop of Jesus, his friendly people. He has his childhood memories from before this thing, his brother, sister as they were, stored, untouchable, still real, or the images, ideas, things the doctors, psychiatrists could never reach. He is settled now, calmer, happy to be still, to sulk, look deeper, find a truce. Be all there is, be all that is there, peaceful, alive, beneath the disguise of his broken body, ill-fitting skin. And this one's just called Sanity. Sanity. He became sane, starting as someone else. He used his ears, took his sight for their own. There was no him. He was no longer agent to himself, could not agree that he was real, a part, whole, not animal or machine. There was nothing true, worthwhile, just his, yet that itself became continuous, position in time, in space, a body with an inside and an out, a movement from one place to another. A pathway began at birth and ending at death, a chance for forgetting, an introduction to the self. Thank you. Feel slightly rusty. I've done thousands of readings over the years, but it's been a while since I've actually stood in front of a group of people. So thank you for, it wasn't quite as fluid as I sometimes can be, I think.
Alan has generously agreed that if anyone does have any questions, any comments, that it would be great to have a discussion. I'm still just taking in the images, very powerful, very beautiful. Something you said about the part inside, you're writing about your brother, psychiatrists and doctors can't read.
Okay,
It's about, just humans that are wrinkled skin that doesn't fit. They're just so many, those lines are bouncing around, and you mentioned that you started writing in the pandemic. I read some of these poems are actually quite old, actually. They go back years, but I started revisiting them at the start of the pandemic and then added in some new ones. To give it some focus and pull it into a collection. Well, I have one question. Since when you started exploring that material, which is of course familiar to you, your family, institutions, places you're familiar with, what surprised you as you got momentum, as you really got more into writing and pulling together a manuscript?
Surprised me.
That just like, wow, I didn't expect that.
I don't know, really. That's a really good question. I think I was surprised I could actually finally deal with this material and pull it into something that could be called art, I suppose. Finally get into a state where I could really use it as a way of communicating something and sharing something, Yeah. But it's,
Will you tell us about being chased by a hippo?
Yes, I was chased by a hippo, but I was in a car at the time. So when I lived in Botswana, I lived in a little cabin next to a river, and in the dry season the river would dry up, and the hippo that lived in the river would suddenly find itself without very much water and wandering all over the place. And they're enormous, they're absolutely gigantic. And I decided to take a shortcut in my car across the riverbed one night and suddenly realized we were being chased by this thing. And they are probably about that wide, got little legs, and they move, I don't know how many kilometers an hour, but they're very, very fast. So I had to kind of gun it in my crappy old Volkswagen Beetle, being chased by a hippo. But the Volkswagen Beetle and the hippo sounded quite similar, strange. It makes similar sort of noise. My brother? Yes, he is. Yeah. And I've shared some of these poems with him. I haven't shared this. This book is pretty new, and he lives on the other side of the world, so I hasn't seen a copy of it yet, I don't think. But he's shared some of those poems. Yeah. Is he out of institution? Oh yeah. He was in and out of institution back in the 70s and 80s, and then he now lives in. He's 10 years older than me, so he's in a retirement complex where they have like a social worker on staff, and has his own apartment. And yeah, he has. He's very embedded in this community. He's been in the same little town for, I don't know, 50 years, I suppose now, and he does, as I say in one of the poems, he's quite religious, because I think in the old days in institutions, religion was really pushed on people, so he really went for it. But he sees no division between different churches. He does literally go to the Catholic Church one day and Protestant the next. He's been thrown out of churches before now because they can't. What are you doing here? I saw you the other day with the other congregation. So he just sees God somewhere, and that's good enough for him, which is fine really. But he's got quite a settled life. Yeah, and he's an interesting individual. His whole he had brain damage at birth, so the whole ways of thinking and feeling he can't access, but very good with facts and figures, and not so good with concepts, and yeah.
Lovely tribute.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Al.
Thank you.